Good evening, everybody. I am Nate Eaton. Welcome to Courtroom Insider. So glad you are here tonight. It is October 3rd and fall is in the air here in eastern Idaho. I was just telling my wife, Erica, today, I'm like, we've had a really good fall so far. Sometimes in East Idaho, it goes from summer to winter. Like you have 2 or 3 days of fall and then we get blasted with snow. So far, no snow. The days have been nice. The leaves are changing. It's a really nice time of year here. So I appreciate you being here tonight. Let us know where you're watching from down in the comments below. This has been an episode, a topic that I've wanted to do for some time. We've discussed the issue in the past, but it's been more than a year, and it's dealing with a local girl from or who was living here in Idaho Falls. She's not from the area, but her mother moved her here, who vanished back in 2023, the beginning of last year. Her name is Elintra Fischer. This is a picture of her, and of course, the first thing that you notice is she is wearing a different type of dress, I guess you could say, or not a mainstream dress, and her hair looks a little different. And immediately when we got the alert here at East Idaho News that this child was missing, we thought, oh, maybe she's Amish, or maybe she's FLDS. And that is what we learned, is that she was a member of the FLDS church. And then I learned a lot more about her story by speaking with her mother weeks later. Her mother's name is Elizabeth Roundy. If you followed my coverage at all, you know that I've interviewed her, and Elizabeth has actually been in the news a little bit lately, the national news, because she is raising awareness of this issue that she calls child trafficking. And this is a definition of child trafficking. Trafficking is where children and young people are tricked, forced, or persuaded to leave their homes and are moved or transported and then exploited, forced to work, or sold. Children are trafficked for sexual exploitation, benefit fraud, forced marriage, domestic slavery like cleaning, cooking, or childcare, forced labor in factories or agriculture, or to commit crimes like begging, theft, working on cannabis farms, or moving drugs. And it is very well possible that Elintra Fischer, who is not 18, was trafficked and forced into marriage. Her mother prays that that has not happened, but it is a big possibility that it has happened. I don't know for sure, but based on our conversation that you'll hear here in a minute with me and Elizabeth, it is a very real possibility. I want to read to you a story that came out in The Guardian from last April, 2023. You might remember, if you followed me during Lori Vallow's trial, this was happening right in the middle of it, and so I tried to touch on a little bit, but here is what it's the headline: ex-members of extremist Mormon sect plead for help to find missing children. This is child trafficking, this is kidnapping, said Lorraine Jessup. Several former members of the Fundamentalist Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, FLDS, the polygamous sect by Warren Jeffs, are calling on law enforcement officers and prosecutors to help them find their missing children, some of who have not been seen in years. In a press conference, the parents and their advocates say a growing number of children living with one parent who have left the church have gone missing recently. They believe their children are receiving help from current FLDS members to return to the close-knit settlements. Jessup was one of the women who spoke at the press conference, said 3 of her children disappeared in the dead of night that winter last year and have not been seen since. She said her children were under extreme pressure to return to the FLDS despite her being their only living custodial parent. She knows of 5 other children who are missing and may be in an FLDS settlement. Jessup described finding grocery bags, walkie-talkies, and bandages hidden for her children. Tools she suspects were left in order to help them run away. You will hear in a minute from Elizabeth Roundy that she believes walkie-talkies or cell phones may have been left for her daughter Elentra. Advocates say the children are deeply indoctrinated and under extreme pressure to return to the FLDS, believing their eternal salvation is at risk if they don't. They say the driving force behind the uptick in disappearances is an August 2022 revelation allegedly given by Warren Jeffs but communicated through his son Helaman, that calls on current members and cast out parents to bring all FLDS children back to the church in order for them to be translated within 5 years. So in August of 2022, Warren Jeffs allegedly gave this revelation to his son Helaman, who's currently leading the church in person, although many say Warren is still doing it from prison. That all the members need to be brought back, because within 5 years there will be a resurrection or a translation. The order has parents and advocates deeply concerned. Will this be another Jim Jones and everyone will drink the Kool-Aid, said Tanya Toole, executive director of Holding Out Hope, a nonprofit that teaches self-sufficiency to current and former polygamists. There's around 10,000 members, it's believed, in the FLDS who practice plural marriage and settlements primarily in the Utah-Arizona border area, southern Utah. And Warren Jeffs has arranged marriages. We know about that. He was arrested in 2006, later found guilty of rape by an accomplice and child sexual abuse. He's serving a life sentence. Do you remember that? I remember I was brand new in news when that happened and the feds raided not only Hildale, Utah, but in Texas, and went into the temple. And I remember seeing the members of the church, all of the women there, and I think Oprah actually went down and did a show on their compound, and then it kind of faded away. Anyway, there's a custom to send people away to repent, which is exactly what Elizabeth's going to talk about here in a minute, and it is not a good situation. And so I've spoken with Elizabeth often over the past year and a half, and she said, I'm ready to tell more. I'm ready to talk. I'm ready to get my daughter home. And so she came in here to our studio a few days ago. We sat down and we talked for about 50 minutes. I'm going to play the whole conversation with you tonight, and hopefully her daughter's watching, and maybe she feels something and feels, or whoever has her, hopefully that she can be brought home. So here is my conversation with Elizabeth Roundy. Hello everybody, I'm Nate Eaton, and here in our studio is Elizabeth Roundy. Elizabeth, we've spoken a few times over the past year and a half since your daughter, Elentra, went missing.
Yes.
You live in Jefferson County, and you have quite a story as far as you escaping the FLDS church and ending up here in eastern Idaho, and your daughter running away or being abducted. How do you describe it?
Well, I believe that she was helped to run away. So in the way that I look at it is it's nothing more or less than child trafficking, which is really scary to me. She did run away. She took my car and ran away, but I believe she had help, and I wouldn't be surprised if there were FLDS people that came to my house in the night and encouraged her or talked to her or helped her to run away, because they drive by my place off and on. I see them driving by my place. And I live right in the corner out in the country, so there's not a lot I can do about it if they just drive down the county road, you know. But, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all if they were actually there helping her run away.
For those people that aren't familiar with your story, you were raised in the FLDS church?
Well, it wasn't called FLDS at the time when I was younger. We called it the priesthood group. But yes, I was raised, I guess you could say partly. I mean, we associated with the group, but we were just up here in Idaho most of the time, so we didn't really do that much with the group down in Utah, you know, only once a month or something. Some of us would go down,
But then things changed when Warren Jeffs became the prophet.
Yes, around 2002, then the former leader we had, Rulon Jeffs, passed away, and But I was already married at that time, and I had moved down to Utah. So I was already down there in the group at that time.
And what age were you when you got married?
24.
24. And
Yeah.
and you were your husband's second wife.
Yes.
Okay, and you went on to have how many children?
I had 5 children.
5 children, all while there, living in Hilldale?
Yes.
And give us a brief synopsis as to how or why you ended up leaving the group. You were kind of banished, weren't you?
Yes. So in 2012, my husband was told by the bishop that he needed to go afar off and repent, and he left our family. And we were kind of separated, and already before he left, they had a member and non-member thing going on where we weren't supposed to associate with each other, and they were already tearing the group apart, basically. But
why did he need to repent?
he never told me exactly all the details. He did tell me, he told us as a family that he received a letter from Warren Jeffs telling him and his brothers, who were all of his mother's sons, that they needed to go, all of them needed to go repent. So they all got this letter at the same time, I believe, and that they were supposed to go afar off and repent. And he said, I'm not going to tell you everything it says, but I'll tell you the part pertaining to the family. And the part that pertains to the family is that I have not raised my family and my children in love. And that's why, one of the reasons I'm being sent away. And that's all he told us. And then he left. So.
And at that time, you weren't allowed to associate with non-members of the faith?
We weren't supposed to in normal settings, but of course we had to associate somewhat between the family, you know. But yeah, it's pretty rough. It was really rough because my eldest son, Jonathan, was considered a non-member and I was considered a member, so I was separated from him. He was only 9 years old at the time.
Who deemed him a non-member?
Lyle Jeffs.
Is that Warren's brother?
Yes. He was one that was considered the bishop, and we were all told to go do interviews with him, and he would decide who was worthy to be a member and who was not worthy to be a member.
So he said your 8-year-old son was not worthy to be a member?
Yes. I believe he was 9 at the time.
9?
But yes.
So where do you put him if you can't have association with him?
So Nephi's first wife was considered a non-member, and so Nephi had the non-members live with her and the members live with me. So that was the condition our family was in before he was even sent away. And then once he was sent away, we were still separated. And
so your one son's sent to live elsewhere, so you have the 4 other kids.
Yes.
And was the other wife, the sister wife, still there in the house with you?
We were at that time. She lived upstairs. I lived downstairs.
Were there any other wives too?
No.
And how many kids total?
I believe, let's see, I think we had 12 children together. I'm not positive. I think she has 6. I'd have to count them. Or she has 6 or 7, and I have 5. So.
What was your relationship like with your husband?
You know, I thought at the time it was good, but I look back and I realize that, I felt like he was never happy at me. And I never could understand, especially after I became a member, and Dorothy didn't qualify to be a member, his first wife. And there was nothing I could do about it. It wasn't my decision, you know. But I kind of felt like he was angry at me for it. And
that you were a member.
yeah.
Wouldn't he want you to be a member?
I don't know. It was really weird. When I first was told I first became a member, you know, the way that they they did it all, he congratulated me, but he acted kind of funny about it. And then after that, he just always acted really irritated, so I never knew what to think. But way before that ever happened, even then, we were told not to have marital relationships. And so the only thing we were allowed to do anyway was to shake hands with our spouses.
You couldn't hug your spouse?
For a while they told us we could hug, and then pretty soon they told us we could only shake hands. No more hugging. So, yeah.
Among all the community?
Yes.
And this came down from Warren Jeffs.
Well, that's what we were being told. Who knows the truth of it?
Right.
I
I asked because I'm wondering, was he abusive at all?
My husband?
Right, with you or the kids?
Yes. He never physically abused me, but he was very abusive he was psychologically very controlling and very abusive with his words sometimes. There was one time where he got very angry and he put his hand up like he was going to come down and kind of slug me with his fist. And I thought he was going to hit me. I was really scared. Anyway, he started coming down towards me, and then he kind of turned and just whacked the wall really hard with his fist. But other than that, he never really physically abused me.
Same with the kids?
No, he was physically abusive to the children. Had a very bad temper. Mostly to our boys.
Is that kind of a cultural thing? Is that common in the church?
I wouldn't say completely, because I believe there's some very good people that were there that were very kind and loving. So I wouldn't say in general no, but I know of a few other instances where yes, it was that way. Nephi himself was raised that way. He talked a lot about the punishments that his parents gave him when he was growing up. So,
but I'm sure as the mother of those 5 kids, when he would lose his temper, that was hard to watch.
Yes, it was very difficult.
So he's banished, or he's sent away to repent. Then how do you end up being sent away to Nebraska?
Well, so after Nephi was sent away, then our family was moved from the family home we'd lived in ever since before I'd been married, across town into another home. And we were kind of moved back together, where we were all living in the same area again, the non-member and member. And it wasn't a very good situation, and they finally separated us. Anyway, but it was 2 years from the time Nephi was sent away before I was told I needed to go far off and repent.
And again, you weren't given a reason?
Well, we were told to come do another interview, and at that time I was what they considered, I was part of what they considered the United Order. And we were told that they were to clean up the United Order, that there was that there were still people, a part of the United Order, that were guilty of murder of unborn babies. And so this interview that I went to when I was told to go repent was an interview to try and clean up the United Order people, to send away all those who were guilty of murder of unborn babies.
Is that because you had miscarried?
Yes, and I had had 2 different miscarriages. And so Lyle Jeffs questioned me down about these 2 different miscarriages. And decided that I needed to go repent from the miscarriage, I guess. I mean, that's all that we really talked about, so I don't know what else he would have told me I needed to go repent for.
Well, this is your whole life. This is what you've known. So how do you, do they just say leave and you have to figure it out? Or do they say go here and someone will take care of you? I mean, I can't imagine suddenly being banished from my home and my community.
No, he said, I feel strongly that you need to go afar off and repent. And I said, okay. And he says, well, you know, it doesn't have to be long. Maybe a few days, maybe a week, maybe a month. He says, I don't know, you know, how long you'll be, you know, be gone. So he made me think that I would only be gone for maybe a month or so, and then I'd be invited back, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't. In fact, so he sent me off by myself and told me I couldn't have any contact with anybody down there in the group, and he specifically told me to not have contact with my family.
And how old were your kids?
My eldest son was 12, and my baby was 2. He just barely turned 2.
Oh my.
It's really hard.
Did you have a car?
Well, I had a minivan that just been our family van, you know, and it had a lot of use, and it was starting to have trouble. In fact, that when we were driving away, it clunked on us 2 or 3 different times on our trip out to Nebraska.
So who was in the car with you?
Well, so after I was sent away, I was told to take my son Benjamin with me also, so it was the 2 of us.
The non-member son?
No.
Oh.
Well, by this time, he was about 8 or 9, and he was also considered non-member.
Okay. So
But-
another son.
Yes, he's my second son.
So they said take your second son with you.
Yes.
And did they give you any money?
You know, the interesting thing about money is that before this happened, I was told to take my son Benjamin out to one of their crews and cook for one of they had some construction crews that were bringing in a lot of money, that they had a lot of the younger people and the men working on these construction crews, and they would go out. At this time they were really large. They had like construction crews in a lot of the states doing different projects. I was sent out to Wyoming with my son Benjamin, and I was able to take my baby with me at this time. This was just a few weeks before I was sent away completely, but I was out in Wyoming cooking for this crew.
Mm-hmm.
that was doing construction.
And making money that way.
Yes, and so when I was first told to go, I didn't know that I was going to be getting paid. But I went out, and up till for about 3 years before this, I had not even been in a store to buy anything, because once Nephi was sent away, and probably a little while before, we were told to just live off the storehouse down there, and that we were to stop going to the stores and everything. And so all of a sudden I'm out here living among the world, you know, the Gentiles, whatever, however you want to put it, people that I'm not familiar with, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a big culture shock,
I'm
guess
sure.
you could say, to being just among down there, being brainwashed, being among the FLDS people, to going out. And I remember the first time I had to go shopping for this crew I was cooking for, I was just, it was just a big deal to me.
I'm sure you were a little scared, nervous,
Yes,
didn't know
yes.
how to act, what to do.
Yes, and here I was away from home, away from the storehouse, and Elentra was about 6 years old at this time, and she had helped me pack the bag for my baby when I was leaving, and I couldn't find any socks for him. So I had to go buy some socks for him, you know, and that was just a big deal because I hadn't bought anything from a store for years before that. But it was a good eye-opener for me, you know, to get out.
So you end up in Nebraska with your son, living in a hotel.
Yes.
And during this time, are you able to communicate? I'm sure this was the days before FaceTime, right? Or maybe you could Skype with your children and see what they look like.
No, I was told not to have any communication.
So you had no communication with them?
Not at all.
And you end up in this hotel in Nebraska, and didn't you do housekeeping?
I was working in the motel doing laundry.
Laundry.
For about 2 months.
Okay.
Yes, when I first was sent away.
And are you just waiting every day for the invitation to come back?
Yes.
And that never came?
Just doing everything I possibly could to try and live right, and to do the right thing and say the right thing, and to try and repent and praying my heart out every single day that I'll get this call, that I can come back to my children, you know. And it never came. I was there for 5.5 years before I said, this is a bunch of nonsense. I'm missing out on my children's childhood, and I didn't want to leave them in the first place. I'm done with this. I'm going to go back, and I'm going to get my children.
Was it suddenly one day you're like, you had this big wake-up moment, like, this is ridiculous, or was it gradually over time that it kind of ate at you, like, this isn't acceptable, you know, and then another day comes and you finally reach the point?
I would say that it ate at me the whole time I was out there.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't feel good about it. I didn't want to leave my children. I was worried about them every single day, every minute of every single day, because I didn't know how they were being treated. I didn't know exactly where they were. I didn't know what was going on in their lives, and I was very worried about them. But yes, there was a time and a day when I came to that conclusion. It was after my father passed away. He passed away, I believe it was in November of 21. Of 19. November of 2019. And up until that point, I'd been praying and reaching and wanting to be reunited with my husband and be able to come back to my children. And us to live as a family again, thinking this was going to happen, you know. And at that point, when my father passed away, then I was actually, my husband offered to, we weren't really supposed to even have contact, but we'd been talking a little bit on the phone here and there, and I'd seen him a couple times just for a visit, you know, for a couple hours or whatever. But up to that point, I wanted to get back with him, but he volunteered to help me drive because it was about a 14-and-a-half-hour drive.
Nephi did.
Yes, from Nebraska, where I lived, up to my father's funeral.
In Idaho.
Yes.
So you get to the funeral.
Well, we're on our drive here to come here. Nephi was he talked very rude and very derogatory or
Condescending.
Condescending, that's the word. Yes, condescending to me. And I had been away from it for long enough by then that I was just upset at him. I just thought, what right does he have to treat me this way, you know? And I realized at that moment, I realized how wrong he had treated me the whole time I had been married to him even. And all of a sudden it all just came to me because I'd been away from it, and I'd been around, for the most part, people that treated me decent and that respected me for the good I did, you know. And I get back around him and have him start talking down to me and telling me that I needed to be repenting and getting after me, and it just really rubbed me wrong. I just thought, I don't have to put up with this, and I don't want to live with this. And at that moment, I decided I did not want to get back with him. I didn't want to be around that. I thought, I don't deserve this, and I don't want it, and I'm not going to be a part of it. I'm not going to let him treat me that way. And that was the point where I decided I'm getting out of this. Not just, that I wanted to get away from him at that time, and so I decided I was going to go get my children, whether he agreed or not, because I'd already talked to him once before that and asked him to come with me and let's go get the children. And he refused, he belittled me and made me feel like I was a bad person for wanting to go get my children. And
wasn't everybody else there in your family really nice to you during the funeral?
Yes, that was when I came back and was around my family for just a few hours to go to my father's funeral. Nephi wouldn't let me stay and visit or let me spend hardly any time with my family. And I realized at that point that was the only reason he'd even volunteered to come, was so he could control what I did
you.
And get me to leave again quick, because he didn't want me to be around my family and get any ideas of coming back. But just being there with them for the few hours I was, and feeling their love and their kindness, and I'd been separated from them for approximately 10 years. And it was just a big eye-opener. What in the world am I doing out by myself with my son in Nebraska? I was worried about Ben. I knew he needed to get around people that he needed to be around loving family, etc., you know.
Right.
And
so you decided to go get your kids.
Yes.
In southern Utah.
Yes.
Did you try to make arrangements beforehand, or did you just show up?
I just showed up at first.
And how'd that go?
Well, I didn't know where my children were, but I had been told that they were in Parowan, Utah. So I got in my car and drove all the way to Parowan, Utah from where I lived in Nebraska. And I didn't know where my children were. I had a sister that actually met me there in Parowan. and she helped me. We drove around and we looked around Parowan and drove around, and we couldn't see anywhere where anybody that was FLDS was living, or we didn't see my children. And so we went to the police and I asked them to help me find them. And the police told me that there wasn't really anything they could do unless there was a court order, and that I had to go through the courts and get a court order, and then they would be happy to help me find them and get them.
And you got the court order.
So yes, at that point, then my sister knew somebody else, that Roger Hull, the Utah attorney down there in Salt Lake, had helped. He'd been helping quite a few mothers get their children back, and some fathers
Right.
that had been sent away. And so she was able to contact a friend she had, and they gave her Roger's number, so I was able to call Roger, and he agreed to help me. I wouldn't have my children if it wasn't for him.
So you ended up getting, was it 4 of the 5?
Yes. Well, I already had Ben, so
You
it would
had
have been
been
3.
So 3 of the 5. 1 never came. Is that
Yeah.
because he was an adult?
Yes, he was already over 18, and I tried getting him to come. He was crying. I could tell he kind of wanted to, but it went against everything they'd been taught. They felt like all of a sudden I was this apostate, and so he was torn. He stood by the truck crying as we drove away, and before we shut the door to drive away, then he was standing there, and I said, "Jonathan, please come with us. Please." I begged him, please just get in and come. I'm like, I told him it's going to help the younger children to have you here, and I want you here. Please come with us. And he says, "No, I can't. And he wouldn't get in, but I could tell that he was torn. I knew he wanted to be with us, but because they've been taught so much against apostates or having anything to do with somebody that they don't believe is faithful to the FLDS, then he felt like he was doing the right thing, and he just had to do the right thing to not come with us, It's really heartbreaking.
Yeah. So you end up bringing those children up here to Idaho, and then lengthy court hearings resume or begin, I guess.
Yes.
Because you're fighting to get custody of them.
Yes.
And ultimately you do get full custody
Yes.
of all of the 4 kids.
Yes.
So when Elentra disappears on New Year's Day, 2023,
Yes.
legally she needed to be with you.
Yes.
And she was 14 at the time?
She just turned 6.
She had just turned 16.
Yes.
Did you know before she vanished that she was in talks, presumably, with members of the FLDS?
I didn't know for a fact because they learned to be really sneaky, but I assumed they were in contact. And after she ran away, I found a phone that was hidden outside. So I know she was in contact with the FLDS. And I found 2 different phones that they gave my children to keep in contact with them when they were court ordered to not have any contact with them, unless it was under the supervision of a professional counselor or somebody like that. They were not to have any contact with my children, and they were still sneaking phones to them. Like I said, they can drive by my place, and I don't know exactly how they've had it all figured out, but I don't trust them, and I don't know if, I wouldn't be surprised if they still have contact with my other 2 younger children, but to my knowledge, they don't.
So she takes your car and then it's found abandoned at a gas station with a letter to you.
She sent me a letter in the mail telling me where to find the car.
Oh, she did?
Yes.
And did she say, leave me alone?
No, well, No.
Or I'm fine, or was it just here's where you can find the car?
Well, so she wrote me a letter, and we had a Christmas tree up. She wrote me a letter and hung it on the Christmas tree the night she ran away, or the morning. And I didn't find it right off, but I did find it that morning after she ran away. And in it, she basically told me that she has thought about this a lot, and this is the choice that she's made to do, and goes into detail. I mean, she didn't really go into a lot of detail, I guess, but she kind of tried to explain herself out a little bit, and basically telling me that it was her choice to go. And I believe that whoever was encouraging her in the FLDS told her what she needed to say to make it sound like she ran away, so that the cops would put it down as a runaway instead of as a kidnapping.
An abduction, right.
Yeah.
Have you talked to her since that day?
No, not at all.
Not a word?
Not a word.
Have you tried to go down and find her?
I wanted to get in the car and drive down and start looking when I got word, we had a couple different hints of where she might be. They were more what you could say a rumor. The first one was, it was from about 3-4 people before it got to me.
Yeah.
It was, she said that, and so the cops couldn't really do a lot with it, but I wanted to go look, and the detectives, I had 2 different detectives that both told me not to do it, because they said if I showed up around there, they would most definitely recognize me, and they'd probably hide her deeper, which is something that happens a lot in these cases.
Right. So do you think she's down in southern Utah?
I do not know. She was in northern Utah, I believe. That I had 3 different hints that people that knew she had been in northern Utah right after she ran away.
Really? And do you think that they've married her off?
I don't know. I hope not. They better not have. She's still underage, and she doesn't have my permission, so they better not have.
When does she turn 18?
She turns 18 in December of this year.
And when that happens, are you then at a complete, you can't do anything further?
Well, I actually talked to the detective that's on the case about that, because I wondered, once she turns 18, do they just drop the whole case, or what exactly happens? And he told me that after she turns 18, she's still going to be on the list, and they're still going to be looking for her. And so if she pops up on the radar somewhere, they will still bring her in. But mostly, I mean, they just have to bring her in, make sure she's safe, and
Then they close it out.
yeah, have contact, etc., to make sure she's okayed, and then close it out, basically.
Right. You said you feel it's child trafficking. Are there other women in the same spot as you?
Yes.
And how many? Any idea?
I'm in contact with one of them in particular that has 3 children missing, and they went missing within approximately a month after Elentra went missing. And so she's been missing, her 3 children, for almost as long.
Oh my gosh.
And yeah, it's really heartbreaking. One of the other mothers that was missing 3 of her sons, they were actually able to find recently, and so she has them back finally. She was missing 3 of them, I think, for around 2 years.
But she got them. She found them.
Yeah, they found them and got them back.
I'm sure, though, once that happens, you kind of have at the back of your mind, though, a fear that what if they're abducted again, or what if they take off again?
Yes, and I'm very concerned about my younger children and what they might try to do with them also. But just hoping to be wiser myself and not let something like that happen again, you know.
Well, you're very brave to be speaking out publicly about it, because do you think that, well, Warren Jeffs is in jail, but do you think they're watching these things, the leadership of the FLDS, that Elentra might be watching, that others might be watching, and know that you're going public with this?
I know that there are FLDS people that see it because, well, Elentra's father saw it, and I know there's other people because I've had rumors come back to me that different FLDS people have they saw my former interview anyway.
What did Nephi say? How do you know he saw it? Did he talk to you?
No, it's just rumor I heard.
Nephi, if you're watching, I want to talk to you. I'd love to talk to you. Come on in, we'll chat. Did you ever officially divorce him, or were you ever legally married?
I was never legally married since I was his second wife.
I see.
It was just a church marriage.
So how are you surviving now, Elizabeth?
Well, just day at a time, you know. Just missing Elentra every day, but praying and pushing forward. Have my other children that I have to focus on, and we just one day at a time. There's still hope, you know. There's the Road Warriors, the motorcycle crew, whatever you call them, gang. They are working on it nonstop, trying to help find Elentra, and I'm so grateful to them.
Good. Hey, are you hearing at all about how the church is running now, with Warren Jeffs being in prison for the rest of his life? And
I've heard rumors here and there, and I know while I was still in it, down there part of it, that he's very much still running everything from prison. He's sending revelations and telling people what to do constantly still.
And is Nephi living down there? Do you know?
I don't know where Nephi is. I have reason to believe he may be back down there, but I don't know.
So if she is watching, what would you say to Elentra?
Elentra, I miss you very much, and I want you to know that I love you very, very much, and I wish that you would come home.
Well, I applaud you again for speaking out and not letting this die, for continually talking about it. There was a news conference in April. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it down there, but you and other mothers were there, correct?
Yes.
Along with the attorneys, talking about this very issue.
Yes.
We've heard there's been shows, I believe, done about the Lost Boys. Is that what they're called?
Yes.
The young men who are banished from the community.
Yes.
And now it seems to be that it's these young women who are being pulled back in.
Yeah, it seems like they're after the women, and it's scary to me. It's evil. I don't know all the details of what's going on, but I've heard a lot of different rumors, and there's been different revelations that Warren's handed out that are scary. So I have a friend that has been in the courts, and her ex-husband has been trying to get her 3 young daughters from her, and I was told that he was instructed to do everything he possibly could to get those girls and bring them back down. And it just doesn't seem like, for some reason, they really want the boys, and it's sickening to me. It's sad. But
I mean, do you foresee the day where it kind of fizzles, falls apart, the church, once Warren Jeffs dies or the older leadership pass away?
you know, honestly, I think it already really has, except for people are still doing what he tells them to do. But the way I look at it is they're not really united as a people and as a church. Everybody kind of has their own ideas or their own beliefs, and they're all scattered, and they all think that I mean, a lot of them still believe in Warren Jeffs and think that he's their prophet, but they don't all agree with each other, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. To me, it's just chaotic. It's, yeah, my heart goes out to them. I hope they can get away.
Yeah.
Get out from underneath the manipulation and the brainwashing, because I know there's a lot of good people there still.
Right.
A lot of good people that I love there still. And it's just heartbreaking to think about how they're being used and abused, and they don't realize it.
Do you have a support system here now?
Yes.
A community?
Yes, my family's been very supportive, very good to me, and
good.
I have friends also that I talk to and that help me. And
great.
Yes.
Elizabeth, thank you for coming in. If you have any information on Elentra or other young girls that may be missing, contact the police. We'll put up a picture of Elentra. You can see what she looks like. And hopefully she comes back.
Yes, that's my prayer.
Yes. Thank you so much. All right. Well, thank you so much to Elizabeth. I really do have to thank her, because I'm sure speaking out publicly on a platform that, you know, for the world to see can be intimidating, especially when this is the only thing she's known up until a few years ago. This was her life. She was raised in it. She was born into this. But she says it was a completely different church when she was a child. Warren Jeffs' father was leading the congregation. She said it was a different time. And then when Warren Jeffs took over, it just turned so extreme. And you heard her say she believes that, you know, Warren was even calling the shots when his dad was the prophet. But hopefully she can be with her daughter again. When her daughter turns 18 later this year, we'll see what happens. There are other mothers in the same situation, and it's so sad. You know, it really is sad. But my thanks to Elizabeth. Thank you for watching. Got to tell you, next week on Courtroom Insider, we have a good one. Ted Bundy's cousin. Going to be speaking with her and a woman who they wrote a book together, and she has some fascinating insights, especially because she was hanging out with Ted as he was killing people. I mean, not at that moment, but she wasn't there with him, but he would go out and someone would be found dead, and then he'd come over for dinner, and they talk about, man, have you heard about this woman who was killed? And Ted played it off perfectly. It is a fascinating topic. That'll be next Thursday, Courtroom Insider, 7:30. Here's where you can, 7 o'clock Mountain Time. Here's where you can find me if you want to follow me throughout the week. I have some other interesting topics coming up here in the next few weeks. And by the way, if you have a case or something that you want me to look at, feel free to leave your suggestions in the comments below, because would love to explore some other high-profile crimes, or maybe some that aren't as high-profile. Would love to talk about that with you, and we will, of course, we'll talk again next week at 7:30. I keep saying 7:30, 7 o'clock. And yes, thank you to all of you who bought mugshot t-shirts. I think we have a few smalls, 3X and 4X, maybe a 2X too, but they're pretty much gone, and I can't thank you enough for supporting our team here at East Idaho News. We're a small team, independent, you know, and your support really does go a long way for us, and we appreciate that. Okay, I think that's it for the night. Thank you again for being here. Thank you again to Elizabeth Roundy. If you have any information on her daughter or any other missing child from the FLDS, call the police, call 911, tell whoever answers that dispatcher phone call that you have details, and hopefully they can be reunited again. All right, thanks for watching. Have a good night.